What if I told you that one of hip-hop's most controversial prison stories just took an even darker turn? What if the man who once dominated the rap charts with platinum records is now fighting to survive behind the same walls that have kept him locked away for more than 2 decades? And what if the person speaking out the loudest right now isn't a lawyer, a politician, or a prison official, but his own brother, hip-hop mogul Master P? Because according to explosive rumors spreading across social media, C-Murder, the no-limit soldier whose real name is Corey Miller, has reportedly been attacked inside one of America's most notorious prisons. The headlines are wild, the details are messy, and the questions? Oh, they're piling up fast. Was this a random prison fight, a targeted attack, or something deeper connected to the decades-long legal battle that has kept him locked inside Louisiana State Penitentiary? And here's where the story takes another twist. Because Master P just broke his silence, and the way he responded has people arguing all over the internet. Is this about justice, loyalty, and family, or is there something bigger happening behind the scenes of the Miller dynasty that nobody is talking about? Tonight, we're breaking down the rumors, the reactions, and the chaos surrounding the latest chapter in the C-Murder saga. And trust me, this story only gets stranger from here. The news started circulating the way stories like this always do in the modern internet era. Quiet at first, buried in a few scattered posts, then suddenly exploding across timelines like a match dropped into gasoline. A rumor appeared online claiming that Corey Miller, better known to the world as C-Murder, had been attacked inside prison. At first it sounded like the usual social media noise. After all, stories about prison fights and rumors about inmates getting targeted surface online almost every week. But this time people started noticing something different. The name attached to the rumor wasn't just any inmate. It was a rapper whose case has been debated, dissected, and argued about for more than 20 years. And once his name started trending again, the internet did what it always does. Everyone suddenly became an investigator. Within hours, online blogs began repeating the same claim, that something had happened inside Louisiana State Penitentiary, the massive prison complex known simply as Angola. For anyone who has followed hip-hop history, Angola is not just another prison facility. It is one of the largest maximum security prisons in the United States, a place with a reputation so heavy that even its name carries a certain weight. Angola is where Corey Miller has spent years serving a life sentence for the 2002 killing of a teenager outside a nightclub. The case has always been controversial. Some people believe the system got it right. Others believe the system failed him completely. And because of that divide, every update about him tends to explode online. This particular rumor didn't stay quiet for long. By the time it reached Instagram and YouTube commentary channels, the story had already grown larger than the original claim. Some posts said he had been seriously injured. Others claimed it was a targeted attack. A few went even further, suggesting it had something to do with tensions inside the prison itself. None of those claims were confirmed, but that didn't stop people from talking about it as if they had been standing in the cell block when it happened. Then, the attention shifted to one man. The internet began waiting for a response from Corey Miller's older brother, the man who helped build one of hip-hop's most famous independent empires, Master P. For decades, Percy Miller has been more than just a rapper. He is a businessman, a mogul, a cultural figure who turned a small record store idea into the powerhouse label known as No Limit Records. And ever since his brother was arrested, Percy has also been the loudest public voice fighting for his release. That history is important because the relationship between the Miller brothers has always been complicated. They grew up together in New Orleans, raised in an environment that shaped both their ambition and their toughness. Their family story has been told many times in documentaries and interviews. The brothers were raised by their grandmother, the woman they affectionately called Big Mama, in a neighborhood where survival itself was an achievement. The family experienced loss early on when their brother Kevin was killed in the early 1990s, an event that left a permanent mark on everyone who grew up in that household. Out of that environment came the ambition that pushed Percy Miller to leave New Orleans, move to California, and eventually build No Limit Records into one of the most successful independent labels in music history. Through that label, the Miller brothers turned themselves into stars. Corey Miller adopted the stage name C-Murder and released albums that sold hundreds of thousands of copies. The label's distinctive sound and branding dominated the late 1990s rap scene, alongside artists like Silk the Shocker, another member of the Miller family who helped expand the label's reach. For a moment in time, it seemed like the entire hip-hop industry revolved around the No Limit camp. But success in the music business rarely comes without controversy, and the Miller family story would soon collide with something far more serious than chart rankings. The turning point came in January 2002 when a fight broke out at a nightclub near New Orleans. In the chaos that followed, a teenage fan named Steve Thomas was shot and killed. Police quickly focused their investigation on Corey Miller. Within days, he was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. From that moment forward, his life changed completely. The music career that once filled arenas and record stores was replaced by courtrooms, legal filings, and prison visits. The first trial ended with a conviction, but the case was later overturned due to issues involving withheld evidence. That decision briefly reopened the possibility that Corey Miller could return home. But the retrial in 2009 ended with another conviction and a mandatory life sentence without parole. Since that day, the legal fight has continued through appeals, petitions, and public campaigns, many of them supported or organized by his family. That history is the reason why the recent rumor about a prison attack immediately caught so much attention. For supporters who believe Corey Miller was wrongly convicted, the idea that he might also be facing violence behind bars added another layer of urgency to the story. For critics who believe the courts already reached the correct verdict, the rumors simply reinforced the brutal reality of life inside maximum security prisons. But the biggest reaction came when Master P finally addressed the situation publicly. People who follow him online noticed that he didn't respond the way many expected. There was no dramatic press conference, no official legal statement. Instead, Percy Miller spoke about the situation in the same reflective tone he has used in recent interviews when discussing his brother's long imprisonment. He spoke about family, about loyalty, about the complicated emotions that come from watching someone you love spend decades inside a prison system. And in doing so, he reminded people that the Miller family story has never been simple. But the rise of that empire also created an image that critics often used against the family. Prosecutors in Corey Miller's case emphasized the aggressive branding and street-oriented imagery that surrounded the label. To them, the persona associated with the name C-Murder helped paint a picture of someone capable of violence. Supporters of Corey Miller have long argued that this image played a role in shaping public perception of the case. So when the rumor of a prison attack surfaced, it didn't exist in isolation. It instantly reopened debates that have been simmering for decades. Supporters began pointing out the many controversial details of the original case, including the lack of physical evidence linking Corey Miller directly to the murder weapon and the later recantations from witnesses. Critics, meanwhile, reminded people that two juries had ultimately found him guilty. And right in the middle of that debate stood Percy Miller, once again being asked to respond to another chapter in his brother's long legal saga. This time his reaction was measured but emotional. He didn't fuel the rumors with dramatic claims. Instead, he spoke about the reality of prison life and the strength he believes his brother has developed during more than 2 decades of incarceration. People close to the family say Percy Miller has spent years trying to balance 2 roles at the same time. On one side, he is a public figure who understands how media narratives work. On the other side, he is a brother dealing with a deeply personal situation that has stretched across decades. Those 2 roles often collide whenever the story resurfaces. At the same time, other voices began joining the conversation. Commentators who had previously supported campaigns to free Corey Miller began asking new questions about prison conditions in Louisiana. Angola, after all, has a reputation that extends far beyond the state's borders. The prison is built on the grounds of a former plantation and houses thousands of inmates serving long sentences, many of them life terms. Former inmates have described the facility as one of the most intense environments in the American prison system. Violence, they say, is always a possibility. That reality led some observers to argue that the rumored attack, if it happened at all, might simply reflect the harsh conditions that exist in any maximum security institution. But the internet rarely settles for simple explanations. Instead, the story began to grow more elaborate with every retelling. Anonymous posts claimed the altercation involved multiple inmates. Others suggested guards had intervened before the situation escalated further. A few went even further, hinting that the incident might have been connected to tensions surrounding Corey Miller's high-profile legal fight. None of those claims were verified, yet they spread rapidly. The reason was simple. People are fascinated by stories that combine celebrity, controversy, and mystery. Corey Miller's case already contains all three elements. Add the rumor of a violent incident behind prison walls, and the result is a narrative almost guaranteed to capture attention. Meanwhile, the Miller family itself remained largely quiet beyond Percy Miller's brief comments. His brother Silk the Shocker has occasionally spoken about Corey's situation in the past, usually focusing on faith and perseverance rather than legal arguments. Other family members, including siblings who rarely appear in the public spotlight, have maintained a lower profile throughout the years. That silence, of course, only fueled more speculation. Online commentators began asking whether the family might be preparing another legal push. Some pointed to recent changes in Louisiana law that allow certain inmates to file petitions claiming factual innocence based on new evidence. Others suggested that increased media attention could put pressure on officials to review older cases more closely. As these conversations unfolded, one thing became clear. The rumor of a prison attack had reopened a much larger conversation about the entire history of the C murder case. People weren't just asking what happened inside Angola. They were revisiting the original investigation, the trials, the appeals, and the decades-long campaign to overturn the conviction. And just when it seemed like the online debate had reached its peak, another wave of commentary began emerging from individuals who claimed they had spoken with people connected to the prison system. According to these accounts, internal discussions were taking place about how to manage high-profile inmates whose cases attract ongoing public attention. Whether those claims are accurate or simply another layer of internet speculation remains uncertain. But they added a new dimension to the story, suggesting that the situation inside Angola might involve more complexity than a simple fight between inmates. As the debate continued to spread across social media platforms, the spotlight remained fixed on the same central question: what really happened inside the prison? Was the rumored attack a random incident, an exaggeration, or something more significant that had yet to be fully revealed? Because the deeper people dug into the story, the more they realized that this was no longer just about a single rumor. It was about the entire history surrounding Corey Miller's incarceration, the family fighting for him on the outside, and the legal system that has kept him behind bars for more than 20 years. And as new claims, reactions, and theories continued appearing online, the narrative moved forward exactly where this moment leaves off, with the fallout beginning to build and the consequences of the latest controversy starting to ripple far beyond the prison walls. And just when the online frenzy seemed to reach a fever pitch, the real weight of the situation began to hit. Because for all the speculation, rumor-mongering, and viral posts, Corey Miller, the man at the center of the storm, remains behind bars at Louisiana State Penitentiary. Life without parole. A sentence that, no matter how many social media debates or celebrity campaigns arise, cannot simply be undone with a tweet. That reality drives home the chilling context of the alleged attack. Here is a man who has already spent decades in one of the harshest prisons in America, and now the very walls around him might no longer feel safe. The alleged attack reportedly took place on one of Angola's notorious cell blocks, areas where tensions simmer constantly and violence can ignite in a split second. Sources, while anonymous, describe a chaotic scene, inmates scrambling, guards intervening at the last moment, and a moment of sheer terror for anyone caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. The reports claim that Corey was not physically gravely harmed, but even the suggestion that he was targeted is enough to reignite debate about the intersection of fame, notoriety, and prison politics. Because unlike most inmates, Corey carries decades of public attention with him wherever he goes. Meanwhile, the response from Master P was both swift and cutting. True to his reputation for speaking bluntly, Percy Miller did not mince words when addressing the situation. In a raw, unedited Instagram post that circulated rapidly across platforms, He expressed frustration and disbelief. "You're talking about my brother? My family? And y'all acting like this is some random drama? I've been fighting for him since day one. Don't you understand what he's been through?" His words, a mix of anger, sorrow, and controlled fury, highlighted. Even within the family itself, there have been disagreements over how the situation should be handled. Some moments in the past showed tension between Corey Miller and his brother, especially during the years when outside supporters began entering the campaign to free him. At one point in the past, Percy Miller publicly expressed frustration about the way credit was being distributed among those trying to help his brother. That frustration became a viral topic in its own right, leading many people to speculate about whether the family had fractured under the pressure of 2 decades of legal battles. But despite those moments of tension, Percy Miller has repeatedly said that he still believes his brother deserves another chance to prove his innocence. So when the rumors about the prison attack began circulating, the response from Master P carried more weight than any anonymous post or blog headline. He spoke about the reality of prison life, acknowledging that violence behind bars is something many inmates face regardless of their background or fame. At the same time, he also emphasized the resilience he believes his brother has shown over the years. And that is where the story becomes even more complicated. Because while the public debate focuses on legal technicalities and internet rumors, the people at the center of this situation are still a family that has spent more than 20 years navigating a reality most people will never experience. Every rumor, every viral headline, every social media argument adds another layer to a situation that was already heavy long before the latest news cycle began. But just as the conversation about the alleged attack started spreading online, another twist began to emerge. Several blogs claimed to have spoken with unnamed sources who suggested that the situation inside Angola might not have been as simple as a random prison fight. According to those reports, tensions inside the facility had been building for some time, particularly around high-profile inmates whose cases attract outside attention. Whether those claims are accurate or not is still unclear. Prison environments are notoriously difficult places for reliable information to escape from, and rumors often grow larger with every retelling. But the possibility that something deeper might be happening inside the prison was enough to keep the story alive across social media platforms. Meanwhile, Master P's response continued circulating online, sparking debates about everything from prison conditions to the long history of the C murder case itself. Some supporters interpreted his words as a sign that the family was preparing for another legal push. Others believed he was simply speaking as a brother who has spent decades watching someone he loves navigate one of the harshest prison systems in the country. And just when it seemed like the story might begin to fade from the headlines, a new wave of posts began appearing online claiming that investigators and journalists were quietly looking into what really happened during the alleged incident. Anonymous accounts claimed that documents were being reviewed and witnesses questioned. Some even suggested that internal prison reports might eventually surface. Whether those claims turn out to be true remains to be seen. But what is certain is that the story has once again pulled Corey Miller's name back into the public spotlight, forcing people to revisit a case that has never truly disappeared from hip-hop culture. Because the deeper people look into this situation, the more questions begin to appear. Questions about what really happened inside Angola that day. Questions about how information from inside the prison reaches the outside world. And perhaps most importantly, questions about whether the latest rumor is just another internet exaggeration, or the beginning of a much bigger story that has yet to fully come to light. And as the speculation continues to grow, the next chapter of the story begins exactly where this one leaves off, with more voices speaking up, more claims emerging, and more attention turning toward the man whose life has become one of the most debated cases in hip-hop history. The attention surrounding the situation didn't slow down after the first wave of rumors. In fact, it intensified. Within days, commentary channels, blogs, and social media threads began dissecting every possible angle of what might have happened inside Louisiana State Penitentiary. Some posts claimed the incident was connected to tensions between different inmate groups. Others suggested it was nothing more than the kind of violent altercation that happens regularly in maximum security environments. But because the person at the center of the rumor was C murder, the speculation grew far beyond the typical prison story. Suddenly, anonymous accounts began claiming they had inside sources. One post said a corrections officer had quietly confirmed there had been an altercation on the tier where Corey Miller was housed. Another claimed that prison staff had tried to keep the situation quiet because high-profile inmates attract too much media attention when incidents happen around them. None of those posts included names, documents, or evidence. But in the modern internet rumor cycle, proof often arrives long after the story has already gone viral. What made the situation even more dramatic was the fact that the name C-Murder already carries a kind of mythological reputation within hip-hop culture. The stage name alone has always sparked debate. Some fans argue that it unfairly influenced how people viewed him during his trials. Others believe it simply reflected the aggressive image that dominated late 1990s rap music. Regardless of which side someone takes, the reality is that the name still commands attention. And attention was exactly what the internet gave the story. Within hours of the rumors spreading, thousands of people were debating the situation. Some supporters insisted that Corey Miller had been targeted specifically because of his celebrity status. Others dismissed the story entirely, saying prison fights happen constantly and that this incident was only being talked about because of who he is. Then the conversation shifted again when commentary channels began revisiting the long history of the Miller family. Because whenever Corey Miller's name resurfaces in the news, it inevitably brings attention back to the empire that once dominated the independent rap scene. That empire was built by his older brother, Master P, whose rise from the streets of New Orleans to the top of the music business remains one of hip-hop's most famous success stories. Percy Miller didn't just build a record label. He built an entire brand around independence. Through No Limit Records, he turned a small independent operation into a powerhouse that sold millions of albums without relying on the traditional major label system. The label's roster included family members and close associates, including Silk the Shocker, whose distinctive flow became part of the label's signature sound. For a period in the late 1990s, No Limit wasn't just a label. It was a movement. Album covers flooded record stores. Artists released projects at a pace that seemed almost impossible. Merchandise appeared everywhere. The brand expanded into films, clothing, and even sports management. It was the kind of entrepreneurial success story that turned Percy Miller into more than a rapper. He became a symbol of self-made wealth in the hip-hop community. The emotional toll that decades of public scrutiny and private struggle have taken on the family. This wasn't just about a fight in prison. It was about watching a loved one endure more than 20 years of isolation, legal battles, and systemic neglect. The response sparked renewed attention to the long, complicated history of the C-Murder case. As commentators revisited key moments, from the original 2002 nightclub incident to the 2009 retrial and the eventual life sentence, social media became flooded with debates. Some voices defended the integrity of the convictions, citing eyewitness testimony and jury rulings. Others focused on inconsistencies, recantations, and the influence of stage persona on jury perception. Every detail, from his infamous nickname to his past music videos, was dissected for clues about his character and the fairness of the trial. The result? A flurry of speculation that blurred the line between fact and entertainment. Inside the prison, observers say, life for high-profile inmates like Corey is never simple. The alleged attack illustrates the dangerous reality of being famous in a place where notoriety can be a target. Inmates, guards, and officials all operate in a system that is underfunded, overpopulated, and rife with tensions. A fight, rumor, or even a perceived slight can escalate into something much larger. And when the world outside is watching, those inside must navigate both the physical risks of prison life and the intangible weight of public opinion. Several sources close to the Miller family allege that the attack may have been partially fueled by jealousy, grudges, or old rivalries that survived long after the original legal battles ended. Those specifics remain unconfirmed. Insiders claim that Corey's reputation, his family's wealth and influence, and the decades of media attention have created a perfect storm of envy and danger. These factors, combined with the high-stakes environment of Angola, create conditions where even a routine day can turn volatile in moments. The alleged incident also reignited discussion of the many campaigns and celebrity interventions that have attempted to influence Corey's legal outcomes over the years. From advocacy rallies to viral social media campaigns, figures like Kim Kardashian and other public personalities have inserted themselves into the narrative, often drawing attention to issues of justice and prison reform. Percy Miller, however, has consistently highlighted the personal sacrifices of the family itself, long visits, legal fees, and emotional labor that extend far beyond the spotlight. His latest response reinforces a recurring theme that loyalty, gratitude, and family support are as critical as any public campaign or legal maneuver. The fallout didn't stop there. As news of the alleged attack circulated, even local and national news outlets picked up the story. Headlines framed it as another chapter in a decades-long saga, often highlighting the dramatic tension between celebrity, criminal justice, and family dynamics. Public reaction, predictably, split along familiar lines. Some celebrated Corey as a symbol of perseverance, enduring both a flawed legal system and the physical dangers of prison life. Others questioned whether notoriety made him a target or whether the media had once again sensationalized a situation that might have been mundane. The debate intensified online, fueling new memes, reaction videos, and commentary threads, each adding layers of narrative that may or may not reflect reality. At the same time, the legal dimension began to resurface. Lawyers, while cautious in public statements, emphasized that any incident in prison could complicate ongoing petitions and filings for release or reevaluation. Though no official investigation had been announced at the time, speculation spread that attorneys might push for internal reviews or security assessments. After all, when a high-profile inmate is allegedly attacked, it's not just a safety issue. It can become a leverage point in appeals or federal petitions. For the family, the alleged attack also reopened old wounds. Percy Miller reflected publicly on the emotional weight of knowing his brother has been through decades of systemic challenges, including hunger strikes, medical neglect claims, and the repeated disappointment of denied appeals. Every perceived setback, every moment of public scrutiny, compounds the stress on the family. It's a situation that many outside observers may not fully grasp, as social media often flattens years of struggle into a single viral headline. Meanwhile, Corey's own response, as reported by unnamed sources, has been consistent with a stoicism that has defined his time behind bars. Those who know him describe him as maintaining his composure, refusing to allow fear or anger to dominate, and continuing to pursue legal avenues where possible. That resilience is both inspiring and terrifying, given the context of Angola. Life inside maximum security prisons is unpredictable, and personal strength can only go so far when surrounded by systemic violence and institutional limitations. At the same time, the ripple effect of the alleged attack started affecting perceptions of the broader prison system. Critics began using the incident to highlight overcrowding, lack of adequate protection for inmates, and the impact of prolonged solitary confinement or high-security restrictions on mental health. Discussions about reform, both state and federal, resurfaced, drawing in activists, legal analysts, and journalists who have long monitored prison conditions in Louisiana. The conversation expanded beyond one individual, turning into a broader critique of systemic issues that have persisted for decades. Social media, predictably, played a major role in shaping these conversations. Fans, critics, and casual observers alike contributed to a growing narrative that blended fact, rumor, and hyperbole. Every new post, every viral clip, every retweet added fuel to the fire. Speculation about what really happened inside Angola merged with commentary on Corey's past legal battles, the role of the Miller family, and the challenges of life inside one of America's most notorious prisons. In many ways, the story became a case study in how modern media amplifies every twist and turn, making the line between reality and sensationalism nearly impossible to separate. Throughout all of this, Master P's voice has remained central. His approach balances frustration, loyalty, and an almost painful realism about the consequences of long-term incarceration. He acknowledges the emotional toll on his family, while still advocating publicly for justice and support. By doing so, He positions himself as both a cultural commentator and a deeply invested brother, highlighting the intersection of fame, family, and the criminal justice system. The alleged attack also raises questions about the psychological impact of long-term imprisonment. Observers note that inmates like Corey Miller face constant stressors, confined spaces, exposure to violence, and limited access to meaningful programs or interventions. Add in the weight of celebrity, media attention, and family expectations, and the environment becomes a complex, high-pressure ecosystem where every incident can have amplified consequences. That context is essential to understanding why the story resonates so strongly online and why Percy Miller's responses carry emotional weight beyond the typical celebrity reaction. As the narrative continues to evolve, one thing is clear: the alleged attack has done more